There are highway exits in Texas that locals do not stop at, not after dark, not alone. They look like every other exit: a gas station sign, a cluster of lights, a ramp into the flat Texas dark. The difference is what happens when you pull off. Most people who learn that lesson wish they had kept driving. Drop a comment below. Where are you watching from tonight? Hit subscribe so you never miss what we publish next on Inside Texas TV. We count down 10 exits. For each one, the highway, the location, the crime data. Number 1 will surprise you. Number 10 takes us to Corsicana, Texas, on Interstate 45. Corsicana sits exactly halfway between Dallas and Houston on I-45, which makes it a convenient rest stop for millions of drivers every year. The exits around Corsicana look unremarkable. A truck stop, a fast food cluster, the kind of overpass that signals an ordinary Texas town with nothing in particular to hide. What the scenery does not reveal is that this stretch of I-45 is one of the most active drug trafficking corridors in the state. The Texas Department of Public Safety has documented repeated narcotics interdictions at Corsicana corridor stops, and the Navarro County Sheriff's Office has issued multiple public statements about elevated criminal activity at interstate-adjacent locations after dark. A Corsicana resident who drove long-haul trucks for 20 years told a local outlet that he warns every younger driver he knows: fill your tank before Corsicana or after you pass it. Do not pull off at night expecting a quiet stop. It is not that kind of town anymore. Navarro County violent crime sits at approximately 4.8 per 1,000 residents. That is nearly 17% above the Texas state average. The I-45 corridor amplifies that number because transient traffic creates opportunity, and isolated exit ramps after midnight create cover. If you are driving I-45 between Dallas and Houston, the smarter move is to stop in Corsicana itself, inside the city limits near the courthouse square, rather than the interstate frontage. The exit is the problem. The town is not. Number 9 is Texarkana, on Interstate 30 at the state line. Texarkana is one of those cities that exists in 2 states simultaneously. The center of State Line Avenue literally marks the Texas-Arkansas border. The exits on I-30 heading in from the east look like any medium-sized Texas city edge: a Best Western, a Love's, a cluster of chain restaurants visible from the ramp. What the I-30 exits do not tell you is that you are about to enter one of the most crime-compressed corridors in deep East Texas. Bowie County law enforcement has issued multiple community advisories about specific blocks adjacent to the I-30 exits, particularly on the south side of the interstate after dark. Local news in Texarkana has covered a consistent pattern of vehicle break-ins, carjackings, and armed robberies that cluster around the interstate access points. The challenge for travelers is that the exits look completely normal from the highway. It is only once you stop that the dynamic changes. Bowie County violent crime runs at approximately 5.9 per 1,000 residents. That is more than 43% above the Texas state average. For a city that straddles a state line, law enforcement jurisdiction adds another layer of complexity. What happens on one side of State Line Avenue may be investigated by a completely different agency than what happens 20 feet away on the other side. When law enforcement resources are split across a state line, response times and coordination suffer. Travelers stopping after dark on the Texas side of these exits are in a zone where that confusion plays out in real time. Number 8 is Beaumont, on Interstate 10 around exit 855. Beaumont is the center of the Golden Triangle, the southeast Texas petrochemical corridor where refineries light up the night sky with a glow that looks almost beautiful from the interstate. The exits heading into Beaumont from I-10 have that industrial energy: massive tank farms, refinery infrastructure, the smell of petroleum on warm Gulf air. What that industrial backdrop conceals is a significant and growing street crime problem in Beaumont's southeastern and central neighborhoods, which are directly accessible from these I-10 exits. Jefferson County has been among the higher crime counties in Texas for years, and the period between 2023 and 2025 saw a specific acceleration in violent incidents near the interstate-adjacent areas. A Beaumont business owner who runs a shop on Phelan Boulevard told a regional news outlet that she leaves before dark and does not return until morning. She has watched her neighborhood change since Hurricane Harvey devastated the region in 2017, and the recovery brought problems alongside the rebuilding. She said some of the new faces at the exit area near her business are not the kind of faces she recognizes anymore. Jefferson County violent crime sits at approximately 6.2 per 1,000 residents. Beaumont City proper, in specific sectors, runs considerably higher, with certain neighborhoods routinely tracking at double-digit rates per 1,000. The lesson from Beaumont is consistent with what you will find at every exit on this list. The access road and the frontage road look safe from the highway. The gas station sign is bright. The problem lives 20 feet from the light. Number 7 takes us to Luling, Texas, on Interstate 10 at exit 632. Luling has a water tower shaped like a watermelon. It sits in the center of town, visible from the highway, and it signals exactly what you would expect from a small Texas town. Local color, community pride, the easy charm of a place that knows what it is. The watermelon tower is accurate about one thing: Luling is small. What it does not tell you is that Luling sits at a geographic pressure point on I-10, and with it comes the infrastructure of exploitation that follows major interstate corridors through isolated areas. Guadalupe County Law Enforcement has documented recurring incidents at the Luling exit area specifically, separate from the broader county crime picture. What locals know is that the truck stop at this exit after about 10 p.m. operates differently than it does at noon. The transient population shifts, the foot traffic changes character. Residents who grew up here learned which parking areas to use and which ones to avoid. It is the kind of knowledge that is not written down anywhere, but everyone in town has it. While Guadalupe County overall sits at approximately 3.5 per 1,000, Luling Municipality specifically tracks closer to 7 per 1,000. That is double the county average and nearly 70% above the Texas state average. Number 6 is Seguin, also on Interstate 10 at exit 607. Exit 607 into Seguin greets you with the trappings of growth. New signage, a cluster of hotels, fast food chains that signal a city building towards something. The off-ramp feels modern, almost optimistic. But between 2022 and 2025, violent crime in Seguin increased by more than 31%. That rate of acceleration made Seguin one of the fastest rising crime cities in its population category in all of Texas. Residents who have lived here for decades say the change was not gradual. It had a distinct moment, a specific inflection point where the character of the exit area shifted. A Seguin elementary school teacher whose house backs up against a fence near the frontage road told a local news station that she no longer lets her kids play in the backyard after 6 p.m. She was not complaining about a bad neighborhood. She lives in a normal residential block. She was complaining about what happens just past the exit after dark, and the fact that it moved close enough for her to notice. Guadalupe County law enforcement data puts Seguin's violent crime rate at approximately 5.8 per 1,000 and rising. The trajectory, not just the current number, is what concerns local leadership. Number 5 is Waxahachie on Interstate 35E at exit 399. Waxahachie markets itself on its Victorian architecture. The historic downtown with its gingerbread houses and ornate courthouse is one of the most photographed main streets in Texas. Driving off I-35E into Waxahachie from the northern exits feels completely consistent with that image. Tidy, leafy, the kind of Texas small town that people move to from the DFW Metroplex looking for a slower pace. The southern exits tell a different story. Ellis County has documented a pattern of transient crime connected specifically to I-35E traffic. and the stretch of frontage road adjacent to the southern Waxahachie exits has been the site of multiple armed robberies and vehicle thefts in the 18 months before 2026. A longtime Ellis County Sheriff's deputy gave an interview to a local paper in 2024, where he said directly that the interstate corridor has changed, and that travelers who stop after dark on the south end of the exit cluster are taking a risk that most of them do not realize they're taking. He said the people who know not to stop there are the people who live there. Everyone else finds out the hard way. Ellis County violent crime runs at approximately 4.9 per 1,000 residents. Crime incidents concentrate heavily near the interstate corridor, a pattern consistent with what researchers call highway corridor criminality, where transient populations and isolated rest points create consistent, predictable opportunity. Number 4 is Palestine, Texas, at the junction of US 287 and Texas Highway 19. Palestine is not on an interstate. It sits in Anderson County in deep East Texas, at the crossing of two major state highways. The junction looks like nothing special: a four-way stop, a blinking signal, pine trees pressing in from both sides, a gas station with a light that may or may not be fully working. Anderson County consistently appears in the top 25% of Texas counties for violent crime per capita. The junction area has been the site of multiple carjacking attempts over the past 2 years, incidents that receive almost no statewide media coverage because Palestine is small enough to be invisible to major Texas news outlets. What makes Palestine notable on this list is how completely normal it looks. There is no visual warning at the junction, no indication that anything is different from any other rural Texas crossroads. But locals know which gas stations to use and which ones to keep moving past. That knowledge lives in the community. It does not exist on any map. Anderson County violent crime sits at approximately 7.3 per 1,000. That is nearly 78% above the Texas state average. For a rural East Texas county, that number is significant. For a junction that most travelers consider a routine stop on a longer drive, it is a number worth memorizing before you get there. Number 3 is Sweetwater on Interstate 20 at exit 244. Drive I-20 through Sweetwater at night, and the primary visual is the wind turbines. Hundreds of them turn slowly on both sides of the highway, lit by aircraft warning lights, moving silently against the dark West Texas sky. The exit at Sweetwater looks quiet, rural, a truck stop, some parked semis. What the sparse landscape conceals is that this stretch of I-20 is an active corridor for drug trafficking moving between Midland, Odessa, and the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Nolan County law enforcement has documented a significant increase in drug-related crime at I-20 stops since 2023, and the Sweetwater exit sits in the center of that pattern. A Nolan County law enforcement officer told a regional outlet that they make more narcotics arrests per capita on this stretch of highway than almost anywhere else in their jurisdiction. The combination of isolation, heavy truck traffic, and overnight parking creates exactly the conditions that trafficking networks seek out. What looks like an unremarkable stop in the middle of nowhere is, in practice, a meeting point that operates on its own schedule. While raw crime numbers are modest due to Sweetwater's small population, Nolan County's violent crime rate relative to population sits at approximately 6.1 per 1,000. For a stop that looks this quiet, that number belongs in your trip planning. Number 2 is Pecos on Interstate 20 at exit 40. Pecos is in the Chihuahuan Desert, 80 miles west of the Permian Basin oil fields. Coming off I-20 at exit 40, there is almost nothing visible in any direction. A truck stop, a road heading into the dark, flat desert stretching to every horizon. It feels like the edge of something. And in a sense, it is. A Pecos County Sheriff's deputy told a local outlet in 2024 that the I-20 exits near Pecos have become increasingly dangerous after dark. The combination of isolation, proximity to the US-Mexico border, and the boom and bust volatility of the Permian Basin oil economy has created a crime environment that surprises first-time travelers. What looks empty from the highway is not empty. It is simply dark enough that you cannot see what is there. The oil economy brings workers, and when the boom cycle turns, it leaves behind a population without income and without options. That economic cycle plays out at truck stops and gas stations along isolated stretches of I-20. Pecos sits at the center of that geography, remote enough that incidents rarely make news outside the county, and rural enough that a single stop after dark puts you miles from any help. Pecos County crime data puts the area at approximately 8.4 per 1,000. That is more than double the Texas state average, in a county so remote that most travelers assume the numbers must be low. The assumption is the problem. And number 1 is Amarillo, on Interstate 40 at exit 74. Number 1 is the exit that most people drive past, completely convinced they are in safe territory. The exits on I-40 through Amarillo carry tourists heading to and from the famous Cadillac Ranch art installation. 10 Cadillac cars buried nose down in a Panhandle field, one of the most photographed roadside attractions on the entire Route 66 corridor. The big Texan Steak Ranch sign glows amber from the interstate. Families pull off for photos. People stop for the 72-ounce steak challenge. The energy on the highway here feels festive. Exit 74 drops you into a different Amarillo. The southeastern quadrant of the city, directly accessible from this I-40 corridor, has seen a rapid and documented escalation in violent crime over the past 4 years. In 2024, Amarillo's homicide rate reached a record level for the city. Local news coverage tracked incidents consistently to specific neighborhoods adjacent to this and surrounding I-40 exits. An Amarillo City Council member told the Amarillo Globe News that the corridor had become, in her words, unrecognizable in 5 years. She was not describing urban decay visible from the highway. She was describing what happens on the streets that exit travelers never see from the ramp. The neighborhoods sit just beyond the gas stations and fast food clusters that line the frontage road, invisible to anyone who does not know to look for them. Potter County, which contains Amarillo, has a violent crime rate of approximately 9.2 per 1,000 residents. That makes it one of the most dangerous counties in Texas, despite Amarillo's reputation as a safe, mid-sized panhandle city. The geographic irony is precise. Cadillac Ranch sits 2 miles west on the same I-40 corridor. Tourists stop there every single day to take photos. Then they drive east, past exit 74, and back onto the interstate, completely unaware that one of the most dangerous exit corridors in the Texas Panhandle is in their rearview mirror. The exits that look the most normal are not always the exits that are the most safe. In Texas, that rule applies from the Panhandle to the Gulf Coast, from the hill country to the state line. The highway tells you how fast to drive. It does not tell you where to stop. The 10 exits on this list are not the only dangerous stops in Texas. They are the ones that specifically combine 3 factors. They look safe from the road, they have documented and significant crime histories, and they are on routes that millions of travelers drive every year, assuming they're fine. That combination is exactly what makes them dangerous. Assumption is not a safety strategy. Texas has more interstate highway miles than any other state. The distances between major cities are enormous, and the stretches of road in between them are long enough that travelers stop wherever the sign is bright enough to see from the highway. That is precisely how these exits work. They are positioned in the gaps, in the long, silent stretches where travelers are tired and where the only thing visible is the exit ramp. If you are planning a Texas road trip, bookmark this video. Share it with someone who drives these corridors regularly. The information exists. It just does not travel as fast as the problem does. Subscribe to InsideTexasTV. We publish every week new data, new cities, stories about Texas that nobody else is covering. Drop a comment below and tell us where you are watching from. Hit the notification bell so you do not miss what comes next. See you in the next one.